Alright, today I want to talk about this guy here. Now this cube can't come out, as hard as you try. But these are both free spinning and completely independent of each other. So the question you might ask is, how did this cube get inside here? Now as a bonus, this is made entirely of plastic. And yet again, we've got a cube inside the cube. The fun part about these two guys, the answer is actually different. Let's jump into Fusion 360, but start our discovery by talking about this woodworking drill bit. This drill bit would be very important because it's the secret to how you make this out of wood. This drill bit will look a little different than the ones that you're used to because it has these outer wings and a guide point. Now, the guide point helps the wood from spinning when you actually drill into it, but it also, to the trained eye, shows you what tool you use to make this illusion. We're going to start this by having a completely square cube of wood. Now, if you're in the wood shop, you're going to go ahead and draw the center point to each of the faces on this cube to use as a reference. Now, you're going to size a drill bit that's set up to be just a little smaller than the actual length of your cube's face. On the computer software, we're going to use the drill tool to give us an idea of what this will look like as we're creating it. Our next step is then to drill into each face of the cube one at a time, slowly decreasing the depth as you go face by face. Now with the computer software, I can just go ahead and destroy the whole thing, but add some parameters so that we can watch this increment little by little further down. So the first iteration I ended up going way too deep, but we'll see how that changes as we go step by step. So let's start by setting our cut depth to 5 millimeters, then setting the depth to 10, 15 millimeters, 20 millimeters, and then 25 millimeters. Now we'll notice at this point, that's a little bit too far. The cube on the inside can just fall right out. So now it becomes a bit of a judgment call. We know it's between 20 and 25, but you're going to have to cut off some material on the outside to make this work with wood. So I'm going to leave it up to you. I ended up with a value of about 22. Alright, so now we made it out of wood. Let's try plastic. So the method I'm going to use obviously is 3D printing. You probably saw that coming if you're watching my kind of videos. So the start's going to look very similar to the last one, perfectly square cube, but this time instead of drilling holes just to the perfect place, we can just go all the way straight through. The reason for that is that we're using a different method of actually making this. Instead of subtracting material, we're going to add material. And that gives us a benefit to create the same illusion with a very different method. So in my modeling, I'm just going to add 3 holes all the way through, add a nice rounding to make the box actually look nice, and then I'm just going to make another box and throw that box inside of the box. And that's all I have to do in Fusion. I guess that's a slight lie. I do need to export this to Cure on my 3D printer slicer. And if you're following along, make sure to switch this to OBJ instead of the default, because you'll get your parts like this instead of your parts like this. And your slicer doesn't really like to put one thing inside of another thing. Trust me, I'm just trying to save you a headache. Once we're inside of our slicer, we can start understanding how this is actually made. 3D printers, unlike a full block of wood, go layer by layer from the bottom to the top. And the interesting part about that is that you can actually build things inside of things without any conflict. All you have to make sure to do is that that piece that's on the inside isn't floating in the air but has some support material, and the smart people that have managed to make these slicers have actually automated that for you for the most part. So while a piece of wood is removed material to create this illusion, we're actually adding material, slowly building from the bottom up to create this out of thin air, with added plastic obviously. So there you have it. 2 different ways to make the same thing. For those interested in making this at home, the one failure that I ended up having was an interesting one. the support material actually had too much of a gap between it and the square on the inside. You can tell by the bottom layer lines how messy they are, that this was not laying very well. And as this was printing, this cube actually got dislodged and was rattling around as it was trying to print. So this ended up being a failure. You can change those settings here in Cura. Taking some inspiration from this YouTube video, I also decided to go ahead and make an even bigger ball inside of the box inside the box. In this one I got down to what looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then kinda 6. Making this big illusion with tons of different balls on the inside. It's just a nice big old mess, and I kinda love it. But yeah, this is all possible with this method, and pretty fun to play around with.